So last week I showed you guys how to apply JimmyGel. This week I'm going to show you guys how to remove JimmyGel in 3 different situations. Hey guys, Liz from the Nail Hub here, and I have my lovely husband Herman, who has been wearing JimmyGel on his nails for about 3 weeks now. We put on different products so that you guys could see different ways to remove it. And if you guys haven't watched my video on JimmyGel yet, go back and watch my last video, and you guys will see everything about this product, including an intro with the creator, Jim McConnell from Elegance. And I wanted to show you the follow-up to that, which is how to remove JimmyGel and how to backfill it so that you understand how to continue to work with it as you progress through your services. So I have JimmyGel on Herman's fingers. Over here, I have just a nice kind of thin overlay with a flat matte top coat, the Light Elegance flat matte top coat. That way it looks really nice and natural, and you can see that it just looks very, very clean and as if it were his natural nail. You can see the regrowth back here is a little bit more shiny, but you can definitely put this on male clients if they want a little bit of protection on their natural nails. You can do that on here. I also have JimmyGel underneath Light Elegance color gel and glitter gel. So this is a typical situation where you're wanting to use JimmyGel as a soak-off base underneath the Light Elegance hard gels. So if you own any of the potted Light Elegance products, this is one of their glitter gels that's on here. Any of these black or silver potted jars, they have either a black lid or a silver lid, and they'll say either UV LED glitter gel or they'll say UV LED color gel. Any of these are hard gel. So the cool thing about using JimmyGel underneath them is it allows you to soak off this product if you want to be able to soak off hard gel. And then last but not least, I'm also going to show you how to backfill JimmyGel. So we did a quick nail on here with a nice JimmyGel overlay, 2 coats of buttercream, but you could use glitter gel, color gel, whatever you want. This is the new Just a Mirage color from the Desert collection that just released. And I did 2 coats of buttercream and top coat. So this is also a typical situation where you're going to want to just remove the color, backfill the JimmyGel, and then put a new color on top. And I did get a request from a lot of you on how to do backfills by hand. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this one with just a hand file instead of my e-file. All right, so let's start with the easiest situation. So you have JimmyGel here, like I said, with a little bit of flat matte top coat. Flat matte is a hard gel top coat, but if you just had JimmyGel, that's totally fine too. It's a nice shiny product once you cleanse it. So I'm going to take a 100-180 grit file. This is the Light Elegance Perfect file. You can see it's nice and gritty on the back. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to etch the surface of the JimmyGel and the flat matte that's on here. So I'm just going to take nice, light, long strokes, very gently because it comes off easily. I'm just going to go through and just kind of make a splotchy surface so that the acetone is able to penetrate this product and get it off, okay? So once I do that, I can go ahead and grab a wrap. You can do this with either just regular aluminum or tin foil and a cotton ball, or if you have ones like these that have the little pad that I've shown before. So just make sure that the pad is nicely moistened with acetone. Make sure it's got a good amount on there. And then, just like I've shown you guys a million times, you're going to wrap this finger, make sure that it covers the tip of the nail and also the full area of the nail. You can also opt, if the person is a little sensitive to acetone or you're worried about it drying their skin, what you can do before you put the wrap on is you can take a little bit of cuticle oil, dab it on the skin, just to protect the nail and the skin, especially on smaller fingers where, the acetone is going to be touching more than just their nail plate. I like to do that. It'll keep their skin from getting stripped of all its oils and kind of protect it during this process. And then you're just going to wrap it up like a little burrito. So if you guys watched my video on how to remove gel polish the traditional way from several weeks ago, you guys will be able to see how to do that. So just wrap that up. And then again, you're going to want to make sure it's nice and snug without being overly tight. That way you're going to prevent the evaporation of the acetone before it starts working. So we're going to leave that for a second. Okay, so I've got this product here, which, like I said, it's JimmyGel color gel, and then the glitter gel, and then also a layer of top coat. So it's going to be a little bit thicker of a nail. You can see it's got a little bit more heft to it. And what I want to do in order to get down to that JimmyGel, I want to actually file through this color gel until I can see that JimmyGel base coat. Okay, it doesn't have to be the whole entire nail, but you do want to get several splotches. So again, you can use a hand file, and I'll show you what that looks like on just half of it. So just keep gently filing in the same place. Be careful of, over filing. Like, you don't need to use a lot of force or speed, because you're going to add friction to the nail, which can cause heat. Let me just dust this off. So you can see how it filed through the glitter. I want to keep going until I can see a little clear patch on the nail. And just a patch is totally fine. The free edge is usually more difficult to get it to release when you've got hard gel on top of a soak-off product. So just make sure that you've got some splotchiness there. So let me dust this off so you guys can see. All right, so can you see how I've got some clear spots peeking through the color gel? You want to make sure that you've got that splotchiness throughout the entire nail. On the other side, I'm going to show you guys how to do this with an e-file in case you want to use an e-file instead of a hand file. So when you do it with an e-file, again, you're just going to take a couple passes. You can see it's much faster. I just kind of tap the nail until I can see base coat. Usually it's about 2 or 3 taps. And I like to do it all over the nail and make it just nice and splotchy. You can also opt to file the entire thing if you want to. If you want to file off all the color, you can absolutely do that. But just with this amount of splotchiness, you're going to get that acetone down to the JimmyGel, and it's going to be able to soak off the JimmyGel from underneath. So again, I'm going to take one of my wraps, make sure it's nice and moistened with acetone. A little bit more. There we go. Make sure it's nice and damp, because you want to make sure there's enough acetone to actually eat through this product. Again, you can do cuticle oil if you want to. That's totally optional. If not, no big deal. You can just put the wrap on. It just depends on, what you want to create as part of your service. Make sure it's nice and snug. And I like to give it a little push on the end of the nail to make sure that the acetone is actually pushing onto the surface of the nail plate. So just give it a nice little tug and then squeeze up here so it's nice and secure. Okay? So let that sit. All right, last but not least, I have my backfill nail. So this has JimmyGel, 2 coats of buttercream, and then I used JimmyGel as the top coat. And I'm going to show you guys how to backfill this by hand. Now, backfilling by hand, the reason why I don't do it is because it just takes forever. But this is how we used to do it before we had e-files. And if you don't like using an e-file, or if you haven't got into using an e-file yet, totally fine. You can backfill by hand. You just need to be extra cautious about where you're filing, okay? So to really quickly show you guys from the side, when I file, you want to make sure, just like when we e-file, and I've shown you guys this in my previous videos, when we e-file, we want to make sure that we're keeping the bit parallel to the nail plate, right? We don't dig in with the tip of the bit. We want to make sure we're using the full surface of the bit, especially when we're removing. Same thing goes for your hand file. So I don't want to be digging into the nail with the edges of my nail file. I want to use the full, width and the parallelness of my nail file to take off the most amount of product, and I kind of change the angle as I go through. And you also need to be very aware of the skin up here, because this nail file is obviously much bigger than the nail plate. So if I'm pushing up into this skin area, I can accidentally cut my client. So before I start filing on a client, you want to take something abrasive. I usually use the scratchy part, like the grippy part of my cuticle pusher, and I'll take off the edges. There's also edge removers that you can buy. You can use a different nail file on top of it, but I'll take off the edges of the nail file so that there's no sharp grit running along here, and that way it's less likely that I'm going to cut my client when I'm removing the product. I do that anytime I use a new nail file for every client, and I do that every time I pick one up. So same thing, make sure you keep the nail file moving. You'll see that I'm going through the whole nail plate as I'm filing. You want to do that because it's going to cause friction to the client's nail, which is going to cause heat. So you don't want to create a burning sensation on the client's nail. Now, if you feel ultra confident with filing, you can do both directions. So you can file up as you come across and then file again down as you come through. You can use a rocking motion and just keep the file on the nail. You can do it however you want. I like to do it kind of like this, back and forth with a light pressure. Keep the file moving until I can start to see that I'm getting through that color layer there. So once I see that I'm starting to remove color, I go through really nice and lightly. I turn the client's nail and I pull back their skin so I can get in close to their skin without scratching it or cutting it. And you can see right here, let me get a little bit closer for you. You can see where the JimmyGel is. So see how it still has that kind of milky, scratchy look to it? And then the real nail back here has more of a almost like a maroon or a darker brown color. That's how I can tell where there's gel. And right here, you guys can probably see that there's a little bit of JimmyGel that flaked off as I filed it. So just watch to make sure that you're not filing through the JimmyGel into the natural nail, especially around the perimeter is going to be very thin. So as you go from the side through the top and around the other side, just make sure you're not filing into the natural nail. Do nice light strokes, use your file, and that product will come off. Okay, so I'm just going to go through, pull the skin back, nice and light, keep the file moving, in different spots on the nail, keep it parallel, and use the full length of your nail file. See how the blue on my nail file goes all the way along? It goes almost the full length of my nail file. If you only have a little bit of product right in here in the middle and you're just shimmying back and forth, it means that you're not using the full length of your nail file, so it's going to take you a lot longer. So just make sure that you're using the full length of your nail file. Hold it way down on the ends. Nice and light pressure. Come across gently. And depending on the product that you've used, this might take a little bit more filing to get through, especially if you've got a lot of layers of nail art or you've got more thickness in your color layer. If you're hand filing your overlays, you're going to want to keep your color layers very thin so that it's much easier for you to remove when they come back. And I'll dust this off so you guys can see. Okay? So there I've come through almost the entire nail plate. I've taken off most of the blue. I've got the product here and no product back here. And then same thing, I'm going to turn this nail over here. I'm going to hold back the skin, and then I'm going to come through almost like with a butter knife, and I like to pull through like this. You can also grip the nail this way if you want to, and kind of pull it down and away from you, and then that way you can use the same hand motion that you were using before. So nice and light, come through. And this just allows you to see where you're filing. You can pull back that skin so you're not touching anything. Okay, so just nice and light, and now I've got all the color off. Then you can proceed with all of your cuticle work, everything, and you can backfill this product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cuticle pusher. You can do this before as well. I like to do it dry. Just push everything back. And this is like how I would do it if I didn't have any equipment, any e-file or anything. I just have a cuticle pusher and a buffer or a nail file. Just make sure you get all of that debris out of there. All the dead skin. Nice and light pressure. Always using very, very light pressure when doing this kind of stuff. So just get all of that debris cleaned off of there. And then I can take the nicer, smoother 180 side of my file. And this time I'm going to go through and I'm just going to very lightly go across that natural regrowth portion and remove the natural shine. I can also remove any lifted areas that are lifting. And when I want to remove lifting, I'm going to file just before the lifting. So just before it, it'll flake off as I file down on that product. Don't file on the natural nail because we've only got so many layers of natural nail to work with, and once you remove them, you've got to wait till they grow back out in order to do it again. And then if there's any lifting on the free edge, I usually file with it. That way I don't end up shoving dust or anything up underneath it. I like to kind of just file down with the same direction, and it'll blend any of those areas as well. So just make sure that you've got the whole natural nail nicely etched without, doing too much of an aggressive job, like so. Okay, you could go in with nippers if you want to and trim off some of this dead material here. So if they have any hangnails, anything like that, you can trim off these little bits here. Anything that's kind of hiding back in the corners. Try not to go crazy with nippers, because ultimately what you're going to end up doing is just removing skin that, you know, might ultimately need to be there. This is someone's middle finger. This is Herman's middle finger. And so if your client has a lot of callous skin on the inside of their finger, it's probably because they write with this finger. And so they're using it on a regular basis. So just, you know, take off anything that might be prone to tearing or pulling. Don't overcut cuticles, because they're going to get annoyed with you and they're going to just continue to grow back even more aggressively. Just make sure everything is nice and clean. And then before I go back and I backfill my JimmyGel, I'm going to give it a nice cleanse with my cleanser, which is mainly isopropyl alcohol and some acetone in it. I want to make sure I get all of that dust and oil off of the nail plate and make sure I get all of the bacteria off as well. Okay? So you guys can see I've got, and as soon as this starts to dry, you'll see it starts to get really chalky. You can see that the natural nail regrowth area looks nice and chalky, and then this whole area right here where it's not really chalky is the JimmyGel, the old JimmyGel. So all I'm going to do to backfill this is I'm going to take some tack, which I showed you guys in my last video. It's a bonder from Elegance that really helps to create adhesion with the natural nail plate and any product I put on top of it. Just a sparing, like very, very sparing amount on the natural regrowth. And you can also pull it through any areas where you know that there's no product. So like I had a little bit of lifting here where a little bit of a piece popped off on the free edge. I can go ahead and pull that through. And if you want to pull it through the whole rest of the nail, you can absolutely do that. But I usually just focus on any places where there's natural nail exposed. And then I'm going to cure this in the lamp for 30 seconds. It creates a really, really sticky layer on the nail once you cure tack. You don't have to cure it, but it does make it extra, extra sticky if you do. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my JimmyGel on my brush. I'm going to scrub that into the nail plate, concentrating mainly on that area where there's regrowth. And you guys all pointed out last time you can shimmy or jimmy, which I think is really funny. So shimmy this JimmyGel on the nail. Make sure you get it really worked into the nail plate where there's that regrowth area. And don't be afraid to pull it down through the rest of the product. There's no harm in getting, you know, this base layer all through the nail. It kind of creates a nice wet layer that allows you to build up the product and put a dollop on there. So I've got this uneven wet surface on here, my wetting layer. And then I'm going to go back with more JimmyGel on my brush, a nice dollop. And I'm just going to push this up towards that cuticle area. Just let it self-level, and you can see like JimmyGel just self-levels all by itself if I just let it do its thing. I just kind of guide it into place. Depending on the thickness you want to create, you can add, you know, more or less JimmyGel, especially if the nail's longer. You're going to want to add a little bit more of an apex to support the length. Okay, and then you're just going to pull that through and let it self-level. And I can use my circle of light here. If you have a line of light, you can use that. And then last but not least, if you want to, you can turn the finger upside down like I showed you guys last time. Turn it upside down and allow the JimmyGel to self-level in the spot that you want it to. Make sure it's centered. I'm basically looking for it to be centered down the nail from both sides. So I want it to be like a nice apex from both directions. And then once you're happy with that, you're going to go ahead and cure. Okay, so now I have the cured JimmyGel on here. You guys can see that that ring of light is nice and symmetrical. And if I turn my client's hand to the side, which is my lovely husband Herman, you can see that I can create a nice apex here on the surface of the nail. And also down the center, if your client has flatter nail beds like my husband does, you can create that arch, you know, the mohawk area down the center of the nail. And then also from the side, creating that apex on the surface of the nail is going to not only make it very pretty looking and aesthetically pleasing, but it's also going to create a lot of strength for flatter nail beds and make them nice and pretty. So from this point, you've got your tacky JimmyGel here. You can go ahead and reapply a color on top of this, or like I said, you can cleanse this. It'll be nice and shiny, and I'll just leave this nice and shiny so you guys can see what it looks like. So you're just going to take a wipe with some cleanser, and you're just going to scrub this till you hear it squeak. Get all of that inhibition layer off of the nail. And you can leave JimmyGel just nice and natural and shiny if you want to on the nail like this. For gentlemen or for people that want even more of a natural look, you can put like Elegance Flat Matte on top of it to create that matte look that's really, really nice and natural looking. You can finish with some cuticle oil, rehydrate the skin that you just worked on, and you can just have your client walk out like this if they just want a natural overlay. Or like I said, you can leave the JimmyGel sticky and go ahead with whatever color you want to do, whatever top coat, and that's exactly how you're going to backfill a nail with just a hand file, okay? So there, I've got my finished JimmyGel on here. All right, so let's go back to the fingers that we were soaking off. So I've had the wraps on there for about 15 minutes or so. And you can see that the JimmyGel is just puffing up and coming off of here really nicely. So you're just going to take your cuticle pusher, be very gentle, and you can just pop the JimmyGel off. It should come off really nice and easy. Just give it a nice gentle push. If it doesn't want to come off all the way, you can put the wrap back on. You know, there might be an area where you didn't get enough of the JimmyGel exposed, but it should come off nice and easy. If you've just got JimmyGel by itself, or if you've just got a thin layer of top coat on top of it, you can go ahead and just nicely work off the JimmyGel off of the natural nail plate. Just use light pressure. You don't want to be tugging or pulling on the product too much, because what it'll do is it'll end up tugging on the natural nail plate, and we don't want to create any type of delamination or anything like that. If you have some stubborn areas, first try gently going in a different direction. So I usually go up, I'll go down, I'll go side to side. Sometimes you can find a little edge where it will come off nice and easily. The goal here is just to be nice and gentle, because the more that you pull off, you know, the more you tug on the natural nail, the more layers you remove, the thinner your nail plate's going to get over time, and you're going to start to see the color change. It'll start to get more pink, and it'll also get a lot more sensitive and a lot more weak. Okay, so just nice and gentle here. I've got one little spot that's being a little bit stubborn right here on this outer corner. So I have a couple options. I can either refile this and put a wrap back on, or what I usually do is I just take a nice smooth 180 grit file and I just lightly file off just the spot that's being a little bit stubborn. Super, super light pressure. Because typically what you're going to do is you're going to end up re-prepping this nail for reapplication. So I usually just leave any bits of residue that don't want to come off all the way. I just leave them on there. It's not a big deal. It's not going to do anything as long as they're not lifting. And it's better just to leave a little bit of residue on the nail than keep fighting it and ultimately end up removing too much product. Okay, so this is now nice and clean and smooth. You could go back and reapply, you know, re-prep, reapply, or you can just leave this, you know, do a cuticle manicure for the person. And again, I always like to re-add moisture to the finger after I'm done working on it. Acetone is very drying, so we want to make sure that we reintroduce some moisture to the finger by putting some cuticle oil and some lotion on there. So there you have just JimmyGel being removed from the natural nail plate. Now this, we've had this on for, like I said, about 15 minutes. When I remove this, you can see that JimmyGel actually puffs up underneath the hard gel. So this actually just popped right up. Can you see that? JimmyGel is actually, it swells slightly when it's exposed to acetone, which is really cool. So that's under hard gel, color, and glitter gel. The whole JimmyGel layer just pops right off. So I'm just going to take my cuticle pusher and just gently push, and it should come off almost everywhere. There might be a couple spots where it's a little bit more stubborn. And I did use tack on this nail when I applied the JimmyGel the first time. So tack, because it's a bonder, is going to make the gel a little bit more difficult to remove because it's going to create excellent adhesion. When we have overlays, that's awesome. We want the most adhesion we can possibly get because we're never going to remove that base layer. But when we're looking to soak off, you may want to not use tack on the natural nail because it's going to create even more adhesion. It's going to be that much more difficult to remove. Okay, so if you have a little bit of a stubborn spot here, again, you can file that and reapply your wraps. If not, you can just gently file that spot off if you're going to reapply, but just be very cautious about filing. I can't say that enough because you don't want to file too much on the natural nail. So I'm just going to literally file just this spot very, very lightly and slowly as well, so I can make sure I'm not filing the natural nail. I'm going to reintroduce some moisture. And then that way my client's nails are going to have some oil back on their finger after all of that acetone and everything. But putting the cuticle oil on the finger before you put your wraps on is really going to protect their skin and protect their nail as you're putting acetone on, okay? And then I have my finished JimmyGel backfill nail over here as well. So I hope that helps you guys understand a little bit more about how to work with JimmyGel, how to remove it, and also how to backfill it. I personally recommend doing the backfill method because always having this nice clear protective layer is going to ensure that you're not over processing the nail, you're not over filing the nail. So I typically like to always maintain a clear layer on the natural nail, and whether I have long nails like these or I have short nails, I like to just backfill whatever product I'm working with, and JimmyGel is a great overlay product to backfill. But you do have the option of being able to completely remove the product through soak off, whether you're using hard gel products on top or not. Okay? Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next week with another episode. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video. Bye.